And one of the things that I wanted to talk about on this one was the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago with Marcus about the Adobe sign and signature, which is kind of outside of our tool. Trying to transition from a paper copy mindset is what we're gonna need to talk through. And then in the workflow part of it, a couple of pieces here on this one. So admissions and records, document to direct documentation to the department chair for review. Need to think through, how do we allocate this role? As we talked about on the workflows the other day, if you recall, that there are role-based approval steps that can be possible, but those are typically like the requester, the requester's manager. And my thought here, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that is not going to be, the student is not going to have, because the student could be taking classes in any department, and so they're not going to have like a one-to-one relationship on their user record with a department chair or a department dean, right? So this department chair could be anybody. So one of the first thoughts is, how does admissions get this to the correct department chair leveraging our workflow? And so that's something to think through, number one. And how to automate that so it's not too laborious of a process. So, and then the same thought, we're going to need to review the same thing on the department dean, right? If we knew who it was, these would be easy steps to set up, as far as all they'd have to do is come in here and approve it, and then it would flow. You know, if it's approved, it would flow this way, and if it were rejected, it would go back to A&R. They would document it in the file, and then next they would automatically send out a rejection notification to the student. Piece of cake. So this is, the department chair is something to think through, and the department dean is something to think through.
Okay.
And then on top of that, it's the signature piece here. Document is signed for and approval and directed. So the first question is, does the chair sign it or does the dean sign it? And I guess either or doesn't really matter. It's a matter of where that signature takes place. And that's the conversation I wanted to have with Melody and the Adobe sign. Yeah. And then there's a signature over here too. So this signature is probably the department chair, and the approval here, this signature is probably the department dean. Getting it back to A&R is a piece of cake. Getting it to notifying the student is a relatively piece of cake. It's just a matter of the wording on those types of things. So those are the signature pieces, and getting it to the department chair and the department dean are what we need to brainstorm through. So yeah, if you guys can figure out the signature piece, I should be able to figure out some options for the chair and dean, and see how we've done that previously. I got a couple of ideas, but I want to explore them a little bit. With the rest of it is really a piece of cake, in all honesty. Then it's just a matter of the form is I'm not worried about the form at all. We can do all of that. That stuff's pretty basic. What I would need some wordsmithing on is, let me go into the workflow on this one. So it'd be this one here. And when I go into my view builder, there's two potential notifications to the student, the rejection and the approval. And that's just where we need to just go in and wordsmith it. And so down here we can, so the subject is, rejected, right? And then you can, using the template tags, you can pull in the requester's first name, full name, all of these things in here, which I did. And then it's just talking about, okay, your petition has been rejected at this time for more info. So what what does your typical rejection notification look like? And you guys might have something like this. And if you do, you send it to me, then I can just input it in here. And then most likely it is, you know, admissions and records, and maybe there's an A&R email or URL, or an A&R, you know, phone number,
Right.
that you want to include in here. Or if there's a, I doubt you have a specific person that you want to contact, but if you please, you know, for more information about this, please contact us at X, Y, and Z, whatever that might be.
Yeah, definitely the main line.
Man, we can just wordsmith how you want this to read, any contact information, and if you have that and you can forward that to me, that would be great. I can input it in here. And then the acceptance one, which is the happy news, same thing, but just what the wordsmith is. And again, you guys probably have some sort of an approval notification email or whatever that we can just strip out and cut and paste inside here. That would say something like approved. Your request has been approved. Next steps include, and then same thing with questions, who to contact, so on and so forth. So that is this one. Always remember, check it back in, save and check in. Again, I know I'm going to be building a lot of these for you, but I sound like I'm being pedantic. It's just that in case you guys are ever in here, I like you to know what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So if you ever need to go in and edit something.
Oh, absolutely. Appreciate it.
So that's that one. The other one is back to our verification of enrollment. And I think this one, we were looking pretty good. Admissions and records approval. It's an approval step. Student notification of completion. Send student. This is a task step for the A&R folks. Send student verification of enrollment. And then down here, update that file. And then a rejection there too. Same thing here. I think this one, you guys are literally, again, if I sound ignorant, forgive me. This one, you guys are physically sending a form, or they're coming in and picking it up based on their response to that. This one, again, would be the notification step where we just need some wordsmithing. So this would be same thing as far as if the, again, sorry, your request has been rejected.
Now, is the rejection or either one, the acceptance or the rejection, is that can you modify that before sending it, or is it going to be automatic? This is the template right here. Once you hit accept or reject, this it's going to send this regardless. It is going to automatically send this message here. Okay, that's good to know. So that way they know, kind of keep it generic. And then, yeah, probably say if you need more information, please call their number.
So I'll note this one too. So for the enrollment verification, just this one, we only need the rejection notification details. Save that just in case. Always save and check back in. So as I mentioned last time, these ones that are just generic, change form, incident form, major, even though you can edit these, I would leave those static so you can use them as essentially as templates. And as you can see, we have a get specific in the names of it. Here's the petition to challenge that I started, the verification of enrollment form. Those are the ones that you want to create from new, but then bring in the classification of this. So it's leveraging this generic service request form, but then you can edit it. And then back on this form, as we're designing it, the preview is going to allow me to see what this form looks like for the student or anybody that's filling it out through the client portal. That's this button here. So the requester is a mandatory field, count department. We got our student ID, our birth date, our address, our phone number, all of the items that that map to that form that you provided,
Mm-hmm.
and then attached down here.
Cool.
So pretty minimal on what the student sees, again, from the client portal view.
Uh-huh.
The TD view is the technician view, or what this ticket's going to look like, what this service request looks like in the ticketing application in TD Next. So when it lands in that application, it's going to start working its way through the workflow. But if you were to pull up that ticket, you have a lot more fields that you can do with it, right? It's going to pull into service and the type, the requester. These things look familiar, but it also has places to leverage the knowledge base article, impact, urgency, priority, all things that a technician can update or edit if they need to. They don't have to, but they could. Responsible person or group can be put in here or built within the service to contain the responsible one. So that's back on the form itself. You can pre-populate the responsible area. And this is oftentimes the if the service request or ticket is not going to go through a workflow, maybe somebody is just handling it as a primary, maybe the help desk is the responsible group here, and they're, whoever's available just picks this ticket up from the help desk and works to completion and doesn't need to leverage that ticketing workflow. But the ones that we're building don't necessarily need to have a responsible person in here, but it certainly can, and that's something we can talk about. Status goes off hold. These are all things that task templates that we'll talk through a little bit later on, but can be leveraged on the ticket that the technician can update and edit. And then down here, we see that some of those ones that the requester is seeing, the student ID and the birth date. So it's pretty minimal for the requester, just getting them the information that form needs, and then the technicians have a lot more capabilities on updating and editing a ticket in general. So just an FYI there.
Mark, if we are not wanting to record time, budget, that piece, let's say, because our A&R staff, I doubt, is wanting to go that granular, are those fields something we can hide, or are they going to always just have to scroll past them and just know that they don't have to populate them? That whole piece right there, estimated hours, time budget, expense budget.
Yeah, they just don't populate anything in here.
So
They just skip over it. Yeah. What you can do too is not associate a time type with your ticket type. I know that probably sounds confusing, but let me.
No, that makes sense.
So if you guys if out of the gate you're like, you know what, we don't want you guys recording time on tickets, or you don't have to because it's just extra work.
Yeah, IT we want to. I know we've talked about doing that on the IT side, but for this particular group, so this service, sorry, I think that's the language I'm supposed to use, right, for this particular service?
So in general, on any sort of, and I mean, I'm in my sandbox, so there might be a couple in here that I don't have time types associated with things. But if I wanted to put time towards a ticket, I could do it in a multitude of places. But let's just pretend I go to the time and expenses application and I want to add time in here. I just go to the green add time button and I select its ticket time, and I spent an hour on this today, and I did X, Y, Z. If I don't have a time type identified, I can't put time towards something. So what you could do, and I'll go back over into your environment, in your IT services ticketing application, you have types. This is the ticket types, not the time type. And the ones, the ticket type that I created was student services. And normally I always tell people associate a time type with a ticket type so that you can put time towards it. So I do have a ticket type associated currently. If I delete this, then any of these student services ticket types won't allow your technician to put time towards it.
Okay, perfect. Now, do we want, because We met with Fabio last week from Sierra College, and he gave us feedback.
Awesome! I love Fabio.
Yeah, he gave us feedback as far as the different groups. Where I think it was called services, right? You were just in that window not too long ago that showed IT services versus facilities. That view. Do you remember what that's? Is that users and roles? I don't remember, but the one that you showed that you clicked on to get into student services. Yeah, applications. There we go. So he was saying, he was just stressing the importance of thinking out those groups in advance, because when we build things under those services, we can't move them from one application to another. We'd have to rebuild them. And so thinking about that, would we want the student services forms and tickets to be under the IT services application, or wouldn't we want it to be student services at this level? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Sure. So your applications here, think of these as your fenced in area. Some people, Marcus calls these castles. Think of them as a castle.
Mm-hmm.
And the IT services are a castle for IT tickets. And the people that have keys to this castle are your IT ticketing technicians.
Right. So see,
Right.
their student services should not be in that one then. The way they are right now, that would not work because they shouldn't have access to the other IT tickets or they shouldn't have keys to our castle. They should have their own castle.
That is certainly, yep, that is certainly possible. Yeah. So then I think you're right. I think if that's the case, that they're never going to be working on help desk type support tickets, if it's
Correct.
all going to be, I'm glad you brought that up. Sorry, I didn't
He said,
ask about that.
and he told us, he's like, do that first, because it's something they said they ran into as well. So that's something he really focused on, was having this built out correctly so that we don't have to redo work later.
You can, he's partially right. So this is a ticketing, anything with the red is a ticketing application. So this is a facilities ticketing application and an IT, right? Those are pretty easily defined, right? Facilities tickets, everybody knows those are different in their own right.
Right.
And IT services are different. You can pass tickets back and forth to the appropriate application, but he's right, you do lose some information along that way when you do that. Only the basic ticketing information gets transferred over, and it's a pain to have to do so. The thought is that if indeed there is a cement wall between the type of tickets that you're needing to have in an application, then you want to create one. So what we would need to do is we can always change these words. Does this meet, like this would be your student services ticketing application. So I would create this as a ticketing application. And this is just kind of high level student. I mean, you don't have to pull one of these in, but this might student affairs.
Registrar would be the most applicable for this, what we're building out right now, the student services. Those are all admissions and
maybe?
records. Oh, there you go. I didn't know you had that option.
Sorry. There we go.
No, admissions is even better. I just thought you didn't have other options. Admissions is great.
All righty. So now, I'm super glad that you brought that up, because I'm gonna have to recreate what I did for those two ones we're working on over that are in here and put them in here. That'll be my homework to do. So thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Another thing to talk through, Melody, is we were talking about, let me go back over into, I started to build out our form, and again, these are sitting in the wrong application, so like I said, I'll have to move those over. This is the next one I started to work on. The form itself is relatively easy. The workflow is where we're going to have to put our thinking caps on for that one. And it circles back to the Adobe signature call, right? Because there are two places in this workflow. It'll probably be easier if I pull up your guys's workflow. So this is the petition to challenge prerequisite or co-requisite, and it gets submitted from the student, goes to A&R. They direct the document to the appropriate department chair for review, and then the department chair reviews and approves the document. Document is signed for approval. So number one, who's doing the signing and where's that happening at? And that's what we talked about a couple of weeks ago with Marcus, as far as at this point, is this going to need to be pulled out of TeamDynamix, signed via DocuSign or Adobe Sign somewhere, and then pulled back in. And then there's another signature over here. So my assumption is the chair is going to do this one, and then the department dean, there's another signature spot over here. That's probably the dean. And again, leveraging that Adobe Sign or whatever other mechanism. So what are your thoughts on how do we get that signature piece accomplished?
Well, I have a question first. So for the chairs and the deans to approve in TeamDynamix, if we went that route, would they need to have a technician license to do that approval?
They would not. They would only
Okay.
need a client license, which is good. That's the good news.
Perfect. Yeah, that was a concern I had, because I knew we already had planned to give technician licenses to student services that were managing the tickets that are going to get generated by these forms, but signers, we did not plan on technician licenses. So, okay.
Yep. So that's not a concern here. What the challenge is to how do we know who these department chair and the department dean are? As far as getting the approval step is really easy to do, right? So if I go to the actual workflow and I view the builder, and always check it out to edit and work at it. If we follow this workflow, that the A&R does this task. When they complete it, it goes to the department chair. But here's where, if we go to edit this approval step, in the approval, and I just threw James's name in here, but you can do it role based, but here's where, how do we find a department chair in here? This might actually require an API web services step that I don't have worked up yet, but this can certainly grab roles, but the roles aren't going to match to department chair and department dean, right? It's a requester's manager. Same thing with the creator, same thing with the responsible, same thing with the reviewer, service owner, right? Even department manager. And that's more, it'd be awesome if this was like, hey, you list all of your department chairs and so on and so forth, but it's not reading that field. It is reading the account department manager for your accounts departments, which would be leveraging how it would tie back to automation here, is that this department manager is the manager on the department that then would be on the requester's user record, which is not going to match to the department chair or dean, right? So Mark just said a lot of words there. What did he mean by that? Back in your overall organization settings is accounts departments, and there's 47 in here. And admissions and records is an account department, and Vicky is currently the manager on that one, right? I'm just using that as an example. So this manager would correlate if that student on that student's user record, now let me go to the user record, and then we don't have your students in here yet, I don't think. Again, let's pretend Alejandro was a student, and that student was a client user. And on that student's user record, this default account department was academic services. So it would read academic services is the account department for Alejandro as the student, and then it would read on the academic manager as Vicky, because it would match it up to the account department record here, or admissions and record, whatever it would be. It would see Vicky, and so in this particular step, if we were to leverage that manager, that's what this department manager field would read. It would read the requester's default account department and that department manager and send this to Vicky if that were the mapping there.
So this particular form, actually a lot more complex, unfortunately, based on the course or the division, the discipline, which I guess we would need to, if there's not already a field there, we would need to have them identify it because it's conditional. If they select it's an art course that they're wanting that override on prerequisites for, then that would determine who that chair or dean was. So that varies depending on the discipline. And so it would need to know that, okay, it's an art course. That means this is the first step of approval. There's not just one chair or dean.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
certainly. And now I actually asked that question earlier because I'm like, this could go to, 4 or 5 different paths.
Right.
So where is that going to occur? Is it right here, the prerequisite for this course?
Yeah, so I see, of course, I'm not the owner of the form, so we would need to get Vicky's buy-in, but I see us needing to add in that black box that says IVC course you want to take and the prerequisite for the course, there needs to be a way to identify what department that's in. And students may not know that, but until we have that identifier, we can't appropriately identify the workflow. Because if they put the prerequisite course, we don't want to build out all 200 courses. That's just stupid. But if they give us that it's part of this discipline, then at least we'd be able to say that, well, when this discipline is selected, do this. So I would just need to make sure that Vicky's comfortable with us having the student, making the student identify what department that course falls under. Because I know that would be more homework on the student's part, but I don't know how to accomplish this workflow without that piece. What we're doing is manually right now, obviously. So once they turn in the form, the person that gets the form is like, oh, I know that belongs to this department.
Right. And that's where sometimes you're like, well, manual's easy. Let's just do that. But that's, kind of defeating the purpose here.
Right.
And then again, this student signature, if that's required.
Right.
Again,
and
that's
then,
where we're going to need to.
Yeah. And if this is one of those where we would need to confirm with her, does this need to be a digital or a electronic signature, or is digital signature acceptable? I would think for this, maybe digital's fine, and that means we wouldn't have to deal with the API. But if it is one of those like the residency that we want to require that additional step, then okay, she just needs to understand that will delay the rollout of that particular form to include that integration piece. But yeah, I would think it's number 3 or number 4. It would be, what department does this course fall under? And based on that response, we would have the different paths for approvals.
So I think that actually helps. And the reason that I'm optimistic is that if there's a trigger based on a custom attribute that we build, and again, we can leverage this thing called a cascading attribute or other attributes, or we could have a drop down, whatever it might be. When they select that course based on that selection, it could fire it to the specific department chair. Let's just pretend this is that step where we leverage our workflow automation rule based on that selection of that custom field. So if that custom field had, like you had mentioned, maybe 10 or 15 different chairs, and that was selected, then we would know who the specific chair is. Where would we know that? Based on that custom attribute, when we fired off this approval step, at least it's more promising than I thought a few minutes ago. So I need to noodle through that one again.
Awesome. I just know it's what we had to do with the other service desk, the one we're using currently. In order to do the necessary approvals, we had to have that piece identified. So I figured this worked similarly. Otherwise, you were going to have it go into like a group, a department chair group?
That is one of several ideas. I'd rather it not. Yeah, I would rather it not, right? Because that.
Yeah. Oh, they'll approve the wrong ones. We know.
Well, my brother is he works at Winona State University in Minnesota, and he's a department chair and department dean, and I know how busy he is, and I'm using him as I'm like mentally thinking through this, and I'm like, if he had to sift through, others, he would, bang his head against the wall, and he wouldn't like it. So I'd rather not go that route. That would be like a last resort.
It would cause battles because then one would accidentally approve a math course and they belonged in the sciences area, and then the science area would get mad at them.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah. If we could avoid that would be great.
We will avoid that at all costs. Back at the form level, we get back into our applications. I apologize. It's not the form that I wanted to wordsmith on. It is at the service level. So if you recall, the service has a long and short description, and that service, because it is built in the client portal, sits in the client portal application, not the service down here. So within the client portal application, in the service catalog in our services and I built out just the shells of those services so far, but the two that we've been talking about, verification of enrollment and the petition. So the verification of enrollment, all of these have a short description and a long description. And I've done my best to just cut and paste in there, but that's another place so here's the short description, which is text-based and 255 characters, I believe. And then the long description can include instructions, and it's better to have, down here you got a WYSIWYG editor, so you could tweak things and make things look nice down here based off of your rich text editor. And I can format this any way that you guys want. The easiest would be if you guys had a short description typed out, and then you guys took the instructions and built it the way you wanted and then sent it to me, and then I could cut and paste and put it in here. That's easy for me, hard for you. Or I can take a shot at trying to format this a little bit, but I don't have all the internal knowledge on what's the, where I should do bullet points and what you want highlighted and that sort of thing. So what are your thoughts for the short and long description? Does one of you want to take a shot at wordsmithing that and sending it over to me? You want me to take a crack at it?
So Vicky, this is Vicky's farm again. She's unfortunately not on here today, but I know we're recording this session.
Okay.
The only thing I can think of is just for now, since she's not here, just take your jab at it as far as what you see there that you copy and pasted, just maybe add some returns, and then just let her know that she will likely need to go in and edit and wordsmith it to her liking at some point.
Yeah, and you guys can, you don't have to do this on a separate document. You guys can come right in here and do it here too. If she was like, oh, I can just do that real quick, and she can dive right in here.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it would be difficult.
Jonathan and James, if she's got admin access, she can do exactly what I did here, or any of you can too. Just come into that in TD admin, client portal, service catalog service, and then come into here and just edit it as needed. But yeah, I'll try to break it up and make it look a little bit more visually pleasing. Okay, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Any questions before we end today?
Thank you very much.